Today's lesson is on relating fractions, ratios, and percent. So we'll learn to convert between all three, and it will cover pages 25 and 26 in your Jump Math 7.2. Question 1 asks you to write the number of boys, represented by B, girls, represented by G, and children, represented by C, in each class. So they'll give you a phrase like, there are 8 boys and 5 girls in class. So how many boys do we have? 8. How many girls do we have? 5. And how many children? 13, because we just need to add the 8 plus 5, which equals 13. So this is all the first question asks us to do. Question number 2 is very similar but has a slightly different setup. It asks you to write the number of boys, girls, and children in the class. So that's the same as step 1, and we'll do that on the lines. And then it asks to write the fraction of children who are boys and the fraction who are girls in the boxes. So the boxes will each get a fraction. So if there are 5 boys and 6 girls, how many boys do we have in the class? 5. How many girls do we have in the class? 6. How many children is that altogether?
12. 11.
11. So now we have to figure out how to rate these as fractions. So our fraction for the boys would be boys out of children. So on the top we would put 5, and on the bottom we would put 11. And our second fraction is going to be like girls out of children. So our top number will be the girl number, so that is 6. And our bottom number is the children, which is 11. Okay? So question 3 asks us to find the missing numbers for each classroom. So we're just going to do one of the rows together. Now, if they give us a 1:4 ratio for boys to girls, that means for every 1 boy, there are 4 girls. So our first box asks us to figure out the fraction of boys. So for a fraction of boys, there's 1 boy for every 4 girls. So that means in that group there's 1 boy and 4 girls, which is 5 students altogether. So we're going to add the 2 numbers in the ratio to get our denominator. The fraction of girls would be 4 out of 5. So our girls number over the total. Now we need to turn these into a percentage. So the percent of boys, if 1/5 of the class is boys, what percent is that? It would be 20%. Because 1 out of 5 is the same thing as 20 out of 100, and the percentage of girls would be 80%, because that's what's left over to get up to 100. So you're going to use the information they give you and convert it to fractions or to percents in order to fill out the rest of the chart. Question 4 is very similar. The chart has just changed a little bit. So instead of having percentages, we're just dealing with numbers and fractions. So if we look at one example, they might give us, there's 30 students and 1/3 are boys. So now we need to figure out the rest of the information. So if we know that 1/3 of the student are boys, what fraction are girls? That means that 2/3 are girls, because that's what's left over from 1 whole. Now, to figure out the number of boys, what would we need to do? So, the question above shows you that you can multiply this by the number of students to get the fraction. Now, what we have to remember is, when we're multiplying, 30 is actually like 30 over 1. So we wouldn't multiply both the top and bottom by 30. We're only multiplying the top number. So 1 times 30 is 30. And 3 times 1 is 3. And so then we can simplify this, right? 30 over 3 would simplify to equal 10. Because if we take 30 and divide it by groups of 3, there's 10. So there would be 10 boys in the class. So if there's 30 students in the class and 10 of them are boys, how many students would be girls? So there would be 20 that are girls, because when we add the numbers together, they should equal the total number of students. Question number 5 asks you to determine the number of girls, the number of boys, and the number in each class. So we just need to find these 2 pieces of information. Now they'll give us an example like there are 20 children and 2/5 are boys. So what would our first step be? So we could take the fraction of boys and multiply by the number of children, 20, to figure out how many boys there are. So I'm always going to multiply straight across. So 2 times 20 is 40, and 5 times 1 is 5, and 40 out of 5 simplifies to 8. So there are 8 boys in the class. So to find the number of girls, we know there's 20 children. We subtract the 8 boys, and that leaves us with
22.
12. Leaves us with 12 girls. So there are 12 girls and 8 boys in this class. Question number 6 says for each classroom, say which classroom has more girls. So we're looking at each of these questions to see which one has more girls in the end. They tell us that in classroom A, there are 40 children and 60% are girls. And in classroom B, there's 36 children and the ratio of boys to girls is 54. So for both of these, we need to figure out how many girls there are in each classroom. So for classroom A, how can we figure out how many girls there are? So we need to start by figuring out 60% of the 40 children. Now, of usually is a code for one of the operations. It could be multiplication, division, adding, or subtracting. It's code for multiplication. So 60% times 40 would be the same thing. So first we're going to multiply these 2 numbers. So 0 times 0 is 0, and 0 times 6 is 0. Oh, we're going to wait and just have our row first. Then we'll go with our x, and then 4 times 0 is 0, and then 4 times 6 is 24. So we have to make sure we go enough steps. So that will leave us with 2,400. Then we need to take this number and divide it by 100, which means our decimal will move 2 places over, and that will leave us with 24. So there are 24 girls in class A. Okay? So to figure out our fraction from a ratio, we're saying in this little group of students, there's 5 boys for every 4 girls. If we were to write a fraction from this group, how many girls would we have? We'd have 4. How many students are in this whole group altogether? There's 9, right? So now we can try to figure out, okay, there's a fraction, 4/9 of them are girls. If we have the total number of girls, or total number of students is 36, can we figure out the number of girls at the top? So 9 times 4 is 36, so 4 times 4 is 16, which means there are 16 girls in class B. So which class has more? Class A. I'm going to let you try the rest of the questions on your own, and if you need help, feel free to come and see me.